My father David lifted his champagne flute. The string lights in the backyard glittered. This whole seed round party was insufferable. He smiled that big, proud smile he only ever used for my brother Nathan. To Nathan, he said, his voice booming, "The only one in this family with the vision to build something big instead of just sitting behind a desk?" The applause was loud. I didn't even blink. I kept my voice perfectly level, cold, and clear. If that vision is already valued, I said, then he can probably start paying the $4,000 for his luxury studio that I've been covering every month. The silence was instant. My brother choked. This story is 100% true. If you've ever been the competent one but were overlooked in your family, let me know where you're listening from. I really want to know. It all started 48 hours earlier with an email from my mother, Karen. I was at my desk, a junior architect, finalizing blueprints for a client when the notification popped up. The subject line was all caps, celebrating Nathan's seed round. I actually laughed. Not a happy laugh. A dry, tired one. Celebrate Nathan. My brother, 29 years old, who had been a startup founder for 3 years. His startup had no product, no employees, and no revenue. It just had a great logo and a lot of buzzwords. I knew this because I was its sole silent investor. For the last 8 months, I had been paying the $4,000 a month rent on his luxury studio apartment. He needed it, he'd claimed, to look successful and meet with investors. 8 months, $32,000. Gone from my savings. The savings I was building to one day start my own firm. I was 27 and I was the one just sitting behind a desk. I wrote back, "What's the occasion?" Mom didn't answer. She just replied with a link to a party supply website. She was ordering catering. I wasn't going to go. I was going to log off, eat leftovers, and go to bed. But something stopped me. Curiosity. If they were hiring caterers, this was a performance. And I wanted to see what closing a seed round actually looked like. So I went. The backyard was ridiculous. It was draped in string lights, and there was a guy in a white shirt shucking oysters. My mom, Karen, was floating around in a new dress, holding a tray of champagne flutes. The whole thing felt desperate. Then I saw it. Parked in the driveway with a giant red bow on the hood was a brand new midnight silver Tesla Model S Plaid. Nathan was standing next to it, sunglasses perched on his head, holding his phone like he was closing a deal. He was explaining to my Uncle Michael that the company bonused it to him, a reward for his hard work in closing the round. "It's all about projecting success," Uncle Mike Nathan said. "You gotta spend money to make money." My Uncle Michael, who runs a plumbing supply company, just nodded slowly. He looked confused. I felt that familiar cold knot tighten in my stomach. The $32,000 I'd sent him wasn't for rent. It was for this theater. I was heading for the appetizer table when my father David grabbed my arm. He had that look in his eye, that beaming blind pride. He pointed his chin toward the Tesla. "See that, Chloe?" he whispered, his voice thick with admiration. "That's vision. That's what taking a risk looks like." He squeezed my arm a little too hard. "You should try and learn something from him, instead of just playing it safe with your little blueprints all day." And that was it. The snap. The anger wasn't loud this time. It was clinical. It was the realization that I wasn't just his sister. I was the fool funding the illusion that was letting him humiliate me. I pulled my arm away from him, walked to the center of the lawn, and waited. I waited for the moment my mother dimmed the lights, and my father picked up his glass to make the toast. The toast that I knew would be the end of it. We were back at the toast. My father's words hanging in the air, my words hanging right next to them. The silence was so total you could hear the ice crack in someone's glass. Nathan, my brother, made a wet gasping sound. He'd choked on his champagne. My mother, Karen, just whispered his name, Nathan. It was my Uncle Michael who spoke first. He put his drink down and his voice cut through the entire yard. Wait a minute. $4,000 a month. You're paying his rent, Chloe. Nathan's face went white. He immediately tried to recover, forcing a laugh. She's exaggerating. It's not like that. She helped me out a few times, but I'm paying her back. It's just a loan. I didn't have to say a word. I just watched him. My Aunt Jennifer, Michael's wife, chimed in. Her voice was sharp. A few times, Nathan, I offered you a job at my logistics company 3 months ago. A good one. You said you were too busy with investors. Were those investors imaginary? Nathan stammered. No, I have things in the pipeline. And what about that $1,000 I lent you last month? Uncle Michael added, his face hardening. You said it was for server fees. What servers, Nathan? The color drained from Nathan's face. All the guests, the catered food, the string lights. It all just looked cheap and pathetic. The performance was over. He looked around trapped. His eyes landed on the only person who had ever saved him. Dad, he yelled, tell them about the seed round. Tell them I closed it. My father, David, hadn't moved. He was just staring at the Tesla, its red bow looking like a wound. Dad, Nathan shouted again, his voice cracking with desperation. David finally turned. He looked pale. He wasn't looking at Nathan. He was looking at my mother. David, my mom whispered, tell them what you. My father cleared his throat. The seed round, he started. It's true. I was the lead investor. Uncle Michael frowned. David, what are you talking about? You don't have that kind of cash. My dad looked at my mom, his eyes pleading. Karen, I knew it was a sure thing. He just needed a little push. And then he said it. The secondary twist. The one even I didn't see coming. It wasn't an investment from savings. My dad said, his voice barely audible. I took out a HELOC on the house. $75,000. The bank approved it last week. HELOC, a home equity line of credit. My Aunt Jennifer gasped. My mother's face just crumpled. It was the face of a woman who just realized she was standing on a trap door. She understood what it meant. The $75,000 was gone. The Tesla, the party, and their house, the house I grew up in, was now the collateral for my brother's fantasy. She made a small sound like the air leaving her lungs and her knees buckled. She just collapsed right there on the grass, surrounded by oyster shells. I didn't stay to watch my mother being helped up. I walked away from the chaos past the oyster bar and stood on the front lawn just breathing. The party music had died. I could hear my father's voice still inside, not comforting my mother but defending my brother. He needed to look successful, David was shouting. You have to project these things. It's how business works. And I suddenly understood. It wasn't just about the money or the car or the lies. I was listening to the textbook definition of the golden child and scapegoat dynamic. In my father's mind, Nathan wasn't just his son. He was the idealized version of himself. He was the risk taker, the visionary, the one who would make the family name mean something. Nathan's success was David's success. And to fuel that fantasy, to prop up that golden child, they needed a scapegoat. Me. I was the competent one, the responsible one, the one who just sat behind a desk. I wasn't the dream. I was the utility. I was the reliable, invisible infrastructure that had to be taxed to pay for the parade. My $32,000, my mother's house. It was all just fuel for Nathan's fire. I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. The entire system was rotten, and I had been the only one pretending it wasn't. I left without saying goodbye. For 3 weeks, there was total silence. No calls, no texts. I blocked Nathan. I didn't hear from my father. I just went to work, finalized my blueprints, and transferred my remaining savings to a new bank account. Then, one Tuesday, my mother called. I didn't recognize the number, so I picked up. Her voice wasn't angry. It was worse. It was hollow. "Chloe, he's drowning. We're all drowning." She laid it all out in a dead monotone. The bank had called. The first payment on the $75,000 HELOC was due. And of course, there was no money. It turned out Nathan had used $50,000 of that loan as the down payment on the Tesla. The one he said the company bonus to him, the other $25,000 gone. Oysters catering a new wardrobe. The bank didn't care about vision. They wanted their payment, or they would start foreclosure proceedings on their house. "He's disappeared," she whispered. "Nathan's gone. His phone is off. The Tesla is gone. David just sits in the backyard staring at the driveway." She finally broke her voice cracking. "Please, Chloe, you're the only one who can fix this. He's your brother. You have to do something." I waited for the familiar guilt. The twist in my stomach that had made me pay his rent for 8 months. But there was nothing. Just clarity. "No," I said. It was quiet. I heard her take a breath. "What? What do you mean, no?" "I mean no. I am not fixing this. This isn't a rough patch, Mom. This is an accounting. And the books are finally being balanced. Chloe will be homeless," she cried. "This is your family, your father." "I have to go, Mom," I said. And for the first time in my life, I hung up on her. A few nights later, there was a knock on my apartment door. It was 2 in the morning. I looked through the peephole and my blood ran cold. It was Nathan. But it wasn't the Nathan from the party. The expensive blazer was gone, replaced by a stained hoodie. His hair was matted, and he had dark circles under his eyes. He looked broken. I opened the door. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me, his eyes hollow, and then he stumbled past me, walked into my kitchen, and just collapsed. He slid down the cabinets and sat on the floor, his head in his hands. He started to cry. Not loud sobs, but these awful, quiet, gasping breaths. "They're going to lose the house, Chloe," he whispered into his palms. "It's all gone. The bank." I just stood there, leaning against the counter. I didn't move to comfort him. I felt nothing. "You did this," I said. It wasn't an accusation. It was a statement of fact. "I know," he choked out. "I know I didn't know how to stop." He looked up at me, his face a mask of shame. "He was just so proud, you know, Dad." For the first time ever, he was proud of me. He kept talking about my vision, my company. He laughed a bitter, wet sound. "What company?" It was nothing. It was all fake, and there it was. The confession of the imposter. This wasn't just about laziness or greed. This was about a crippling, profound fear. My brother was so terrified of admitting he was a failure that he'd rather become a criminal. He'd rather burn down his own family's house than disappoint the one person who finally saw him as a star. It was just It was just a logo, Chloe, he whispered. I paid a guy online $50 for it. There's no product. There's no investors. There's nothing. He was crying hard now. I used the rest of the HELOC money to make the first payment on the Tesla. I thought if I just looked the part for a little longer, someone would believe me. Someone would give me real money. I just needed more time. He looked at me, his eyes desperate. Please, you're the only one who's smart. You can fix this. You can make a plan. I'll pay you back, I swear. Just help me. Save me, Chloe, please. I looked at him, this hollow shell of a man on my kitchen floor, and I felt the last bit of my old stupid compassion just evaporate. This wasn't a breakdown, it was a balance sheet. I didn't say a word. I just walked past him, went to my desk, and opened my laptop. The screen cast a cold white light across the dark room. I opened a new program. Not my architecture software. A spreadsheet. You're right, Nathan, I said, the clicking of the keys echoing in the silence. I am going to make a plan. I'm not saving you, Nathan, I said. He looked up from the floor, his face stricken. What? I turned the laptop screen toward him. The empty spreadsheet glowed in the dark. I'm not saving you, I repeated, my voice flat. I'm not a lifeboat. I'm an architect, and you're a collapsed building. I'm giving you a blueprint to rebuild. This wasn't about compassion. It was about accounting. I started typing. This is the real ledger, I said. This is what's not fake. I listed the debts one by one. $32,000. That's my money. The money you used for your apartment while I was saving for my own firm. $75,000. That's the HELOC. That's Mom and Dad's house. $1,000. That's to Uncle Michael. And finally, I pulled up a quick search, the loan on the Tesla, which after the down payment is still, wow, a lot. He stared at the numbers. He looked like he was going to be sick. Chloe, I can't. I can't. You don't have a choice, I said. This is the plan. Step 1. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., you are calling the Tesla dealership. You are selling the car back. You'll take a massive loss, but you'll do it. That money pays off the HELOC. All of it. Before the bank seizes the house. That is non-negotiable. He just nodded numb. Step 2. You are getting 3 jobs. Not one startup job. 3 real ones. The kind where you get your hands dirty. I started typing again. Job 1. You're calling Uncle Michael. You're begging him for that warehouse job you turned down, and you'll take whatever pay he gives you. Job 2. I have a friend who owns a diner. She needs a dishwasher and a prep cook for the morning rush. You'll start Thursday. Job 3. The grocery store down the street is hiring for overnight stocking, midnight to 6 a.m. He looked at me horrified. 3 Chloe 1. I can't work 20 hours a day. You can, I said, my voice like ice. You're just used to other people working for you. I was working 60 hours a week at my firm to pay for your rent and save for my future. Now you will work to pay for your past. And so, he did. The first week was brutal. He got the job at the warehouse. He started washing dishes. He started stocking shelves. His texts were pathetic. One night at 3 a.m., I got a picture of his hands, red and raw from the dishwater. My hands are blistering. I texted back one thing, keep going. A few days later, a text from the warehouse. I think I pulled a muscle in my back. Keep going. He was exhausted, miserable, and for the first time in his life, he was actually working. Then my father called. I'd been expecting it. He didn't say hello. "You're being cruel, Chloe," he hissed into the phone. "You're trying to humiliate him." "I'm teaching him," I said calmly, sipping my coffee. "He's not built for this. He's a thinker, a visionary. You're making him do labor. He has a brilliant mind." I'd had enough. His brilliant mind almost made you homeless, Dad. His vision was a lie that you bought literally. I'm teaching him the one thing you never did: how to show up, how to actually work. I hung up. The text from Nathan slowed down. The complaints stopped. I wasn't sure if he'd quit or just given up. Then, 6 weeks after that night, in my kitchen, I got a notification from my bank. Deposit $1,500. I opened the app. The memo line just said payment 1. More coming. It wasn't just money. It was accounting. The real ledger was finally slowly beginning to balance. The payments kept coming. $1,500, $800, $2,000. Every single week without fail. He never texted me about it. I never texted him. It was just a transaction. It was accounting. Nathan kept all 3 jobs for almost 9 months. He sold the Tesla back to the dealership at a humiliating loss, but it was enough to pay off the $75,000 HELOC in one lump sum, saving my parents' house just weeks before the bank's final deadline. He paid back Uncle Michael the $1,000. And then, almost exactly 1 year after the seed round party, I got a final notification. A deposit for $200. The note on it just said paid in full. I opened my spreadsheet, the real ledger. I typed in the last payment, and the cell at the bottom, the one that had glowed red with negative $32,000 for so long, turned a quiet, calm black 0. I stared at that number for a long time. I thought I would feel triumph or anger or even relief. I didn't. I just felt quiet. I realized then what I had done. People think that love is shielding someone from the storm. They think it's being the umbrella, the coat, or the roof absorbing the damage so the other person stays dry. That's what I used to think. But sometimes real love is trusting that they are strong enough to walk through the rain themselves. It's handing them back their own responsibility. You aren't giving up on them. You're giving them the chance to finally truly show up for themselves. I closed the laptop. A few weeks later, my mother called. Her voice was hesitant. We're having dinner on Sunday, Chloe. Just us. Nathan's cooking." I paused. "Okay," I said. "I'll be there." When I walked in, the house was quiet. No string lights, no catering. It smelled like roasted vegetables. Nathan was in the kitchen wearing an apron chopping lettuce for a salad. He looked tired, older, but he looked solid. He wasn't performing. He just nodded at me. "Hey, Chloe." My father, David, was sitting at the table. He looked smaller than I remembered. Dinner was quiet. We just passed the salad bowl. We talked about my work. We talked about Nathan's plan to get a certification in logistics from the local community college starting in the fall. At the end of the meal, my father stood up. He was holding a glass, but this time it was just water. He cleared his throat, and his eyes were red. He looked at Nathan, and then he looked at me. I want to make a toast," he said, his voice quiet. I was wrong. I spent my whole life chasing an idea, a vision. He looked at Nathan. "And I'm proud of you, son, for the work you've done." Then he turned to me, and he finally really saw me. "But I want to toast. Chloe," he said, his voice breaking. "She had the real vision all along. It's not about what you pretend to build. It's about what you actually maintain. It's about the ledger. Thank you, Chloe, for saving this entire family. If this story resonated with you, please share it. Maybe there's someone out there who needs to hear that sometimes letting go is the most powerful act of love there is.